Hello, welcome to the Roundtable. We have a selection of global issues that will keep your brain alive and stimulated. Here are today's guests who will guide us through the topics. We are joined by Professor Lee Kyung-suk. Welcome back, Professor Lee.
Thanks for having me again.
We are pleased to be joined by Professor Kim Yeon-hee. Welcome to the Roundtable.
Thank you for having me.
More than 6 years have passed since the trade dispute between the United States and China began in January 2018. The economic conflict ignited when then U.S. President Donald Trump imposed tariffs and other trade barriers on China to correct what he called unfair trade practices. He then quickly spread to the technology and security sectors, becoming a prelude to a long-lasting power rivalry between the two countries since then. So, Professor Lee, why and when did this trade dispute between China and the United States begin?
We have to think about the underlying tensions actually before the trade war started. So there was underlying tensions for years, over decades, between United States and China. And for decades, they were concerned, especially in Washington, about the China's trade practice. For example, allegation of currency manipulation, intellectual property theft, and unfair subsidy to the state-owned enterprises. So for example, the currency manipulations. So China intentionally devalues its yen against a dollar to gain an unfair trade advantage. So a cheaper currency makes a Chinese export cheaper and more competitive in the US market. On the other hand, it makes the United States products more expensive in their own domestic market. So actually it protects the Chinese domestic industry from the United States exports. And the second kind of example is the intellectual property theft. So the United States accused China of widespread and a systematic theft of the American intellectual properties. For example, in the advanced manufacturing sectors, aerospace, technology, and semiconductors, for examples. And lastly, there was a subsidy. The Chinese government subsidized the SOE, the state-owned enterprise, for a long time. This is actually gave a benefit to the Chinese companies and being more competitive against the United States markets. So here, based on these underlying tensions for years, for decades, Donald Trump actually started economic war against Beijing. So in 2018, United States imported a record of $540 billion in goods from China. On the other hand, it sold to China $120 billion. So the trade deficit, it's around $420 billion. So based on this trade deficit, Donald Trump actually in 2016, in his presidential campaign, he declared that he will start a war against China. And then this is actually the beginning of the trade war between Washington and Beijing. So, and we have to think about the reciprocity between the economic interdependency. So once United States imposed tariff to China, then as a reaction, China also imposed tariff to Washington. So around there's a underlying, ongoing different retaliatory tariff impositions to United States and China, and that's how the stories began, and it's still continuing.
I see. While the U.S.-China trade dispute has been ongoing for the past 6 years, the global economy has been facing continuing and new uncertainties. The world experienced the COVID-19 pandemic and geopolitical risks like the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. So, Professor Kim, let's talk about the future. Where is it heading to?
Well, first, I also want to sort of underscore the key points in relation to understanding U.S.-China strategic competition in relation to global tensions. So first, the global pandemic really underscored the risk of depending heavily on China for resources, from basic raw materials to advanced electronic parts. So the key thing is the over-reliance on a single source. This was exemplified by Beijing's policy during COVID-19. The lockdown at Foxconn facilities dramatically affected supply lines for major companies such as Apple. These companies were actually already diversifying their supply chains due to their rising labor costs in China, which was diminishing cost advantages that initially attracted them. The pandemic accelerated this reevaluation, emphasizing the need for strategic diversification of supply chains. The second key point is supply chain resiliency. The pandemic and subsequent global conflicts have underscored the importance of managing global logistics, which are crucial for maintaining resilient supply chains. There has been a notable shift towards integrating digital technologies into logistics operations to improve management from suppliers to consumers. This advancement of digital infrastructure in logistics profoundly shapes the dynamics of U.S. and China trade wars, particularly as both nations strive to gain a strategic edge in global trade and security by competing for dominance in critical technologies such as AI and 5G. Finally, it has become very difficult to distinguish between trade involving commercial and military technologies. This problem was highlighted when U.S. identified Chinese companies supplying microelectronics and machine tools to Russia, accusing China of bolstering Russia's defense industry and therefore supporting the Ukraine war. In response, the U.S. has leveraged tariffs and economic sanctions to exert pressure on China. As a result, a U.S. China trade war has evolved to become a strategic foreign policy tool.
Right. It has evolved from the trade war into strategic competition between the two giants in the global system. And Professor Lee, what do you see the current situation, especially considering the allegation that China has become the major victim of the trade war with the United States, judging from the very difficult current state of its economy?
So they have to think about it, what the current status of the Chinese economy is. First of all, some experts argue that China is facing several challenges and the economic condition will be deteriorated in the future. But also there are other group of scholars, they argue that still China has a potential to recover and there's a signs of resilience. It's true that the Chinese economic growth is steadily declining compared to the, for example, the 1980s or 1990s economic growth. But still the economic growth is significant by global standards. Okay. So in 2023, the China's economic growth was 5.2%. What was the United States economic growth in 2023?
15%?
50%. It was actually 2.5%. And on average, the global economic growth was 2.6.
So Chinese economic growth is a double, right?
Yes, exactly. So still, the economic growth is pretty relatively high among the other countries. Right. From these understanding, there are two camps that have a different assessment about the future economic Chinese economy. The first camp actually argues the China peaks argument, and the other groups of scholars argues no, China is still a growing economic power in the world and will lead the economy. So the underlying logic about the China peaks argument is there's actually the Chinese working age population is shrinking because of the one-child policies, and there's a labor shortage because of the declining working age, and also China is facing the middle income trap. So China was really a labor-intensive industries, and now it's changing to the manufacturing and advanced technology countries, but still there's a gap. So there's a middle income gap that China is facing right now. But the other side of experts, they argue now it's time to China adjust its economic structures. So the main argument is from these scholars is the economic resiliency and adaptability. So they think now China is facing challenges, but because of the huge, large middle income consumers in China, they have the largest market in the world. So because of the economic adaptability, China has still a huge potential to further grow in the future. Also, these scholars and the social scientists point out the high investment to the high technologies, for example, 5G, AI, quantum, bio. And these 5th generation technology are the crux, the important factors for the future economic growth. And China is almost the number one countries that invest a huge amount of energy and sources to develop these factors. I will give you one example. There's always a human rights issues. So they're really able to collect all the massive amount of data data without the human rights issues. And these are the data, these are the baseline and a really important sources that why China can so rapidly develop and involve its 5th-generation technologies. And based on these assessment, so we don't really know where China's economy is heading right now. So, and we need more time for make a more precise and accurate evaluation about the Chinese economy.
I see. First again, what do you think about the story of the U.S. side? How does this trade dispute between U.S. and China, affect the growth potential of U.S. economy and its core industries?
The Biden-Harris administration increased tariffs across strategic sectors, which is steel, aluminum, semiconductors, electric vehicles, lithium batteries, critical minerals, solar cells, ship-to-shore cranes, and medical products. And I wanted to kind of reframe this question considering the upcoming 2024 elections, since the tariffs has really impacted states with economies that are heavily reliant on manufacturing and agricultural sectors. And usually workers within this industry are most impacted by trade conflicts. So for example, Wisconsin and Iowa's agricultural sector, so Wisconsin is known for dairy and soybean exports, and its main market is China. And Iowa's agricultural sector is mainly soybean and pork, and they have felt the strains of the tariffs. For example, Michigan's automotive industry also experienced first-hand challenges posed by tariffs on steel and aluminum. And then Pennsylvania's manufacturing base, which includes steel, saw some complex outcomes. So while some steel makers experienced initial boosts due to reduced competition from exports, the overall benefits were tempered by high prices for raw materials and retaliatory tariffs that affected the products exported from Pennsylvania. And finally, Ohio combines both manufacturing and agricultural sectors, making it vulnerable to job losses from industrial decline and agricultural tariffs as well. So these states really rely on agriculture and manufacturing and are directly related with relations with China. And I believe that they might be potential swing states in the upcoming elections.
You will leave a very little wiggle room for the current Biden administration and the new president in the White House, right?
Yes.
In the early days of the trade dispute, most experts predicted a U.S. overwhelming victory. However, some observers are voicing opposing opinions that it is getting unpredictable, as China is actively investing in the industries of the future while growing fast in the cutting-edge manufacturing sector. So, personally, put it in a very, very simple frame, who's going to win the war?
So we have to really understand the economic interdependencies, and it's a really complicated situation. So if, once again, if China, United States impose some tariff, then China will also impose a retaliatory tariff. And then it affects both sides. So initially, like United States, the strategists thought about if United States like impose this tariff, then China will they thought they will back down, but that was not the Chinese response. And here, the first strategy was the decoupling strategies, to decrease the Chinese dependency on United States, but it also affect the United States domestic companies. So here, and then there's a growing voices inside United States and also among the Western allies, because decoupling has a huge negative influence to everyone. Let's shift from the decoupling strategy to de-risking strategies. And also there's a growing voice inside United States because they needed a market. Yes, and where's the largest market in the world? It's the Chinese market. So the United States domestic companies need access to the Chinese market for the sustainable growth. And then the United States policymakers are shifting their mind from decoupling to de-risking. So who will be the ultimate winner in the future? No one in this kind of economic interdependent global situations. But here we have to think about it. In general, the economic interdependence is the destiny for both countries. But here, in terms of the high-tech technology like sectors, there will be a heated competition, and this will be continued in the future. Why? This kind of the advanced technology, there's a direct nexus between security and economy. So for de-risking, it doesn't mean that they will ease the tensions, but they will ease the tension in a normal areas that are not really sensitive to national security, but there will be a more intense competition in the really sensitive high-tech sectors that have a huge impact on the security. And also the advanced technology, they're directly influenced to the Chinese and United States economic growth in the future. Considering all the factors together, I'm really cautious to say who will be the winner in the near future or in the ongoing U.S. China strategic competition.
So Professor Kim, these countries as rational actors must be aware of the risk involving in just escalating the tension forever, right? It is a very interesting development that the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, traveled to Beijing and had a meeting with not only his counterpart, Foreign Minister Wang Yi, but also President Xi Jinping. Is this rivalry possibly managed in the future? What do you see in the future?
Yes, great question. I think that U.S. and China will definitely try to manage the strategic competition. So definitely the U.S. and strategic competition will continue to influence diplomatic and military strategies across critical global regions. And as a result, it will be very difficult to sort of differentiate between what is a security issue and what is an economic issue. So for example, if we look at the Indo-Pacific region, trade tensions have prompted China to enhance its strategic and military presence, potentially escalating tensions in sensitive areas like the South China Sea and Taiwan. And so China will definitely seek to strengthen economic ties and alliances in the Indo-Pacific as a counterbalance to U.S. influence using the Belt Road initiatives. And U.S. will similarly use the Indo-Pacific Command, which is the Asia-Pacific jurisdiction, to solidify its strategic alliances with South Korea and Japan. So China will definitely use this substantial trade relations to influence sensitive political and security decisions of countries in that region, which will become a security dilemma. Also, we also see this in the affect of Africa in terms of economic and diplomatic expansion. China is intensifying its economic investments and diplomatic engagements in Africa as a broader strategy to diversify trade and lessen its reliance on American markets. And it has a growing military footprint in Djibouti, which also has a U.S. military base. So U.S. has 26 military bases in Africa, and now China is trying to also build a military base in Africa. And as a result, it will also overlap with questions about global logistics and ports. And also China has been trying to mediate diplomatically with Saudi Arabia and Iran, so it will definitely try to connect these diplomatic issues to the larger Belt Road initiative in the Middle East. So I think overall, the conflict between U.S. and China in these regions will overlap with the questions, as Professor Lee has kind of also mentioned before, which is the technological rivalry in terms of AI and emerging technologies that play a crucial role in military and cybersecurity capabilities, and then a fuller kind of decoupling in terms of, or de-risking, as you mentioned, with supply chain realignment. And so more countries will try to strategize where to put their manufacturing industries, not in China, right? And we see that move happening with Mexico and India. And then finally, telecommunication infrastructure is critical for modern supply chains, and modern supply chains are fundamental for world economy. So these kinds of technologies and AI, machine learning will be useful for real-time data flow and smoothing operations, but they will need areas where they have to both collaborate because it will both intersect with economic interests and security interests. I guess the US and China trade war is a kind of deeper manifestation of deeper structural and systematic conflicts that are conflating and overlapping with national security concerns and the critical role of technology and telecommunications in modern economies and military capabilities.
Right. It's not just a trade wars, but it's a global rivalry in many aspects. When China joined the World Trade Organization in 2001, it was believed that China and the United States would be two pillars of thriving and stable world economy. A quarter century later, the great expectation has not been fully materialized. Let's move on to the next topic. There are about 58,000 flight routes in operation across the world, both international and domestic flights combined. Among that, what is the busiest route? Let's check it out on the screen. Please take a look.
편하게 전화도 타거나 태풍을 넘어 꿈에서 본 섬 이제 거의 다 왔어 이거야 꿈 같아 이 느낌 알지 찰랑찰랑 부서지는 그 파도 뛰어들 거야 빛나colada cheers 훌쩍 떠나 way young 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 Take me on an ocean blue Surfing, surfing, surfing on a wave with you Here we go 까맣게 달려와 모래성을 써 Like that So cute Like you Oh yeah 더 오면 괴물자 ice 사랑을 끼얹은 punch So smooth Like you 춤 없이 달려온 너랑 또 춤출 거야 Oh la 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 오늘 네 얼굴이 좋아 너의 고민들을 알아 자 손 한번 흔들어주고 푸른 저 바다에 손대 벌써 눈이 불 꺼질 시간이야 너의 손잡은 채 걷고 싶어 행복이 뭐야 But now we're escaping to
Surprisingly, the Gimpo-Jeju route took the top position as the busiest route. I knew that it would be one of the popular routes, but I didn't expect it to be within top 10, if not top 1, right? Why is it so popular?
So the first reason is definitely there's no alternative transportation system.
Yes.
And also there's so many airlines and there's a competition among them. So there's more suppliers than provide the service, then the price goes down.
According to the Korea Tourism Organization, the number of foreign tourists visiting Jeju has recovered to 94% of pre-pandemic levels. And many of them use the Gimpo-Jeju route. Professor Kim, have you been to Jeju Island?
Yes, I've been to Jeju a couple times.
Right. And I learned that you used to live in Hawaii, which
Yes.
is likened to be Jeju Island in the Pacific Ocean. So
That's right.
what's your impression of the Jeju Island in comparison?
I believe there's a lot of similarities in terms of the amazing diverse ecosystem in both Hawaii and Jeju Island. And also they have distinct culture and histories related to the land. So I believe that there's a lot of cultural connections between Jeju and Hawaii. And of course I've hiked Mount Hala, I've went swimming, and you know it has a gorgeous nature. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities.
I feel somewhat proud that Korea is home to the world's busiest flight route. Professor Lee, what are the benefits of this honor?
So the airport, like there's a various economic activities and business that revolve around the airports and actually create a huge revenues. And the scholars actually categorize in 3 different domains that helps, for example, the Jeju's or the other countries' regional economy. And the first revenue sources is the direct airport operations. So think about the airlines, the ground handling service, the air traffic control and security service. All this service creates like some revenues and boost of the economy. And also think about the commercial activities within the airports. There's a retail shops, duty-free shops, restaurant and food service, and this is actually attracts all the tourists and it creates revenues for the domestic peoples. And also there's a supporting industries, for example, the aircraft manufacturing and maintenance industries, the fuel suppliers and the catering system, the cargo systems, and this is also creates jobs and provides benefits to the local people. So this airport in general itself, it's a really important factors to boost up the economy, and it really helps the people to enhance the economic lifestyle.
Well, this is a very counterintuitive and surprising to me personally, because I always thought that it's the other way around. Local economy benefits airport, not the other way around. But you said that in terms of the airport economy, airport is the provider of the benefits to the local economy
exactly.
and even national economy.
Yes.
All friendly flights are connected in today's world with a sea of world travelers. South Korea has become one of the hubs of such a wonderful trend. This is all for today. We'll be back next week with more up-to-date issues. Professors, thank you so much for sharing your analysis and insights with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching and goodbye.